Hello, a very warm good morning to all of you and welcome to Unacademy. Welcome to today's The Hindu newspaper analysis, where we take a look at the international edition of today's The Hindu newspaper, take a look at the important articles which are relevant for your prelims as well as the mains examination, and discuss the important areas out of them rather than being lost in the narrative of the article itself. Now, during this discussion, we shall also be taking a look at the mains type of questions and understanding the nuances of answer writing and how to frame a good answer. I would suggest that at the end of the discussion, do visit our Telegram channel and do take a look at the multiple choice questions which can be framed from the topic and thereby aim to have a better preparation for prelims. Now, if you want to download the PDF of the session, you can download it from the Telegram channel, and the link of the Telegram channel is provided here. Now, having said that, many of the candidates, they face certain issue with regards to how to streamline the preparation and how to go ahead with the preparational schedule, how to select the optional, how to approach the current affairs, where to go for answer writing, and so on. So in order to solve all these queries, we at Unacademy, we are coming to Hyderabad to conduct an offline seminar on 25th of January, that is Saturday. So there, join Sarmad Mehraj Sir, myself and Himabindu ma'am for a personalized guidance and a strategy session, and ensure that you crack the civil services in the first attempt. Now, let us take a look at the topics that we are going to have a discussion for today. So today in total, we are going to discuss around 12 topics. So obviously, many of those topics are relevant for your prelims preparation. Having said that, the first 4 topics that we are going to discuss in greater detail for the mains perspective, there also you will have certain snippets relevant for the prelims. So wherever important and wherever required, I shall point it out that this is the portion you should revise for the prelims as well. So starting with India's winding road to end tuberculosis, that has appeared in the editorial section. This is one of the very high frequency areas in GS paper 3. UPSC tends to ask questions about TB multiple times. WHO is right now, in the sense this is about US exit from WHO and its overall impact. So this is relevant for your GS paper 2 as well as some parts of GS3. A great birthday for the Election Commission of India. Now, this is a political article in the sense that it talks about one perspective of a political party, but we shall use this opportunity to understand the issues faced by Election Commission of India, the way forward, the constitution of the Election Commission of India, the appointment of the members. That is what we are going to concentrate on, and we are going to steer away from the political perspective given in this article. So this is again relevant for your GS paper 2, which has appeared in the editorial page. Now, is France's influence in West Africa over? This is about the retreat of France and the French troops, the French soldiers, as well as the French influence from the countries of West Africa, including Chad, Mali, Niger, and those particular countries. So what is that about, and what is its overall global implication? That is again something to be discussed for GS paper 2. Now then, we have a host of various different topics relevant for the prelims. That is something we are going to discuss along the way. Now, what we have found out, by the way, is that many candidates are facing a lot of issues in terms of filling out the application forms, especially those candidates who are appearing for the examination this year. So today, we are going to have an Ask Us Anything session. Do check out the YouTube link and the YouTube channel. So all the queries that you have regarding the filling of the forms for 2025 Civil Services examination, do join and do get your query resolved. Okay, so this will be taken by Abhishek sir and Shyam sir. You can join that session. Now, starting with the first topic, that is India's winding road to end TB. Now, tuberculosis is considered to be one of the most massive silent killers in the modern day age because of the number of people who are influenced by it, but also the amount of casualties that are caused year after year because of this disease of TB. India is one of those countries across the world where the burden of tuberculosis is very, very high. Now, there are various different factors due to which tuberculosis continues to be one of the major problems in India. For example, the inability to detect that it is a real TB case, the reluctance of the patients as well, the social taboo which is associated when you know that someone is impacted by TB, and a quick spreading mechanism. All these have led to TB to become a monster that we see today. So, when we talk about tuberculosis, starting from the very basics first, tuberculosis is caused by Mycobacterium tuberculosis, right? Now, this Mycobacterium tuberculosis, that is something which impacts generally our respiratory systems. Now, from our respiratory systems and from the cardiovascular systems, that is where this infectant then spreads over from the air-to-air mechanism to other individuals as well. So, that is where the spread happens. However, this kind of TB, which is referred to as the pulmonary TB, is not the only type of TB that you have. But obviously, you can understand the implication of it, that in the larger crowd and high population density region like India, where not everyone is even aware that they are suffering from TB or not, where coughing in the public, sneezing in the public is a part of a public decorum that has been accepted over the years. So there, a slight flu-like condition oftentimes is treated with some random medicines. Rarely do people get themselves tested for tuberculosis. Now, in that scenario, the spread becomes very fast. And that is when slowly and steadily a larger population gets impacted. But then you have other type of TB as well, what is referred to as the extrapulmonary TB. Now, what is that extrapulmonary TB? Now, in this, you have the impact which is felt in other organs other than your lungs, right? So, in other parts of the body, for example, kidney, liver, etc. Now, in this case, what happens? You see, when you suddenly, let's suppose, start coughing a lot and you have pus which comes out, sputum which comes out, maybe there is a suspicion that there is a TB case. But when you have issues with the other organs, not only are the patients unaware, but in many of the cases, medical professionals also are reluctant to test that for TB case. They treat that with random medicines. Antibiotic dosages keep on increasing, but the problem of TB persists. Now, you have to understand this, that in majority and the socio-economic realities of our country is such that many of the individuals, they don't have that much amount of disposable income. Having said that, majority amount of money that Indians spend out of pocket expenditure, that is on healthcare, buying medicines, etc. So after a point of time when an individual has spent a lot of money on buying these medicines from these doctors who are unable to detect these cases, then what happens? They lose trust, they lose faith. Then they go to a random chemist, or they can go for a quack or etc. and they will be given further antibiotics. Now that leads to development of the most dangerous of them all, that is the drug-resistant TB, where due to excess antibiotic usage, now your body has become immune to the drugs which are generally administered to cure TB. So these are the kind of cases and the prevalent situation that we face in India today. Just to give you an overall idea about the magnitude of the problem that we face, if you take a look at it, then in the global burden for TB, if you observe, India has an overwhelming share of 27%. That is very, very high, right? And this is not the real data, in the sense, this is not the 2025 data, but that data is always considered in hindsight, because the reportage, the collection of data, etc. takes multiple years for re-verification and so on. So this is something that we can trust. Now here, you will observe that a total number of people in the world suffering from tuberculosis is 1 crore. Out of that, 27 lakh are from India. So think about it, 27% of global TB patients are from India. Now, deaths due to tuberculosis in 2017, 1.6 million. In 2018, 1.5 million. So we are one of the high frequency, or we are the ones who suffer a lot from TB, as in the population set. But you see, the situation is not that grim as well. You have to take a look at the silver lining sometimes. Now, the overall decline in deaths due to TB, that has been substantial, around 24% in India in the recent years. That is much higher than the global average. So we are moving aggressively to combat TB. But still, there are many different obstacles that lie in our way. So we need to understand what these obstacles are, what are the government initiatives to eliminate TB, and also what is the way forward. That is something we have to understand. So first of all, the government programs. So one of the most vital government programs is National TB Elimination Program. Now, this National TB Elimination Program seeks to eradicate tuberculosis in India by the year 2025. That is 5 years earlier than the global goal. Now, obviously, the COVID pandemic, the occurrence of COVID pandemic did not help our cause. And in fact, that put us back in the ladder to eliminate TB. So yes, elimination by 2025 is simply impossible. It is not doable at all. But then overall, the endeavor is to reduce the incidence of the TB cases, the cases which are there to increase the detection, diagnosis, and once who have been diagnosed, to track them and ensure the medicinal intake. Because one other issue with TB that we have to consider, and we will consider that as well, is that the medicine, the duration for which you have to consume medicine can be very high. 6 to 8 months. So many of the patients, they don't follow up on these courses, right? So that leads to other issues we will discuss. Now, the Sustainable Development Goal targets with regard to TB is 80% reduction in incidence, 90% reduction in mortality due to TB, and zero TB patients and the households, they face catastrophic costs. So zero TB patients. Now, the program has been guided by the National Strategic Program of 2017 to 2025, which stands on 4 basic pillars: detect, treat, prevent, and build. These government initiatives, they are vital for your prelims, as well as you have to highlight them in the mains examination as well. Now, having said that, Prime Minister from the ramparts of the Red Fort had announced India's ambition to eliminate TB and had called for a Jan Andolan, right? So that was about increasing the public participation, improving the public awareness about the problems of TB, and ensuring that everybody cooperates, helps the people who are suffering from TB, and ensure maybe a financial help, maybe help in terms of diagnostics, etc., so that together as a community we can come out of it. So that is also Pradhan Mantri TB Mukt Bharat Abhiyan. That is another government scheme. Pradhan Mantri TB Mukt Bharat Abhiyan. Okay. Now, this calls for mass participation. Mass participation and mass awareness. As a consequence of this particular program, you have various different governors of the states, chief ministers. They also went ahead and volunteered themselves as Nikshay Mitras, who are the volunteer groups which help in the entire larger mission to eliminate TB from India. So mass participation and mass awareness. Okay. So that is important. Now, you understand that this National TB Elimination Program is actually an ongoing program which is being operated for a long time, right? So that was revised National TB Control Program. That was the earlier name. That has simply been renamed to National TB Elimination Program with revitalized goal setting. That is it. Okay, these are the government schemes that you have to keep in mind. Now, what are the issues that are faced in our country when it comes to elimination of TB? First is difficult detection. There are many cases which are there where symptoms are not indicated immediately. As a consequence, those infected cases lie in the larger public domain in high density populated areas, and they can be super spreaders. So that is why detection is key. And in many of the cases, when we talk about detection, we don't have the infrastructure for the testing. The testing takes time, and we don't have the isolation wards. We don't have, even if we have the infrastructure, we don't have the machines. If we have the machines, we don't have the skilled individuals. So there is a lot of issue in terms of provision of infrastructure and skilled individuals. Now, there is a low awareness of population in terms of tuberculosis. Right? So other forms of tuberculosis, for example, the drug-resistant tuberculosis. Very few people are aware about that. Then even extrapulmonary tuberculosis that we have discussed. That is also something which many people are not aware about. Now, what happens? As I was telling you, the medication for this TB goes on for around 6 to 8 months, where on a daily basis, you have to pop in many different tablets, many different pills in order to ensure that you recover from TB. That is a drug regime that you have to follow. Having said that, as soon, and this is a tendency that you would also be able to associate yourself or someone in your family with. Many of the times it would have happened that you are very ill, you went to a doctor to get yourself checked up. Doctor has given you a prescription for 10 days. After 2 days of these medicines, you start feeling better. Then you stop taking the medicines after the 3rd day, that these medicines are going to harm us. Isn't it? That is a natural tendency that we have here. So similarly, in the case of TB, when the antibiotics are prescribed, as soon as the symptoms, they start to subside within 1 month, majority of the patients, they leave those medicines. And also, it is very difficult to follow up because the large population of, for example, migrant laborers, it is something which is impossible for them to be able to track that diagnostic and track the medicine taking. They feel that they will get better by the natural immunity. As a consequence, the TB is not eliminated from their body, but now the pathogens, they develop a resistance against the drugs of TB, against the medicines of TB. And that is when the cases escalate. And that is when already it becomes too late. So that is where drug-resistant TB, due to incomplete course, incomplete follow-up of medicines, etc., that is one of the biggest dangers that we face. So there is a substantial lack of awareness. Then difficulty in tracking. As I told you, many of the migrant laborers, they suffer from this TB because of working conditions oftentimes exaggerate the problem. For example, when you are working in situations, let's suppose a glass factory or let's suppose construction industry, then you already are having the exposure to issues like silicosis, etc. That is when, if you are impacted by mycobacterium, your overall health parameters go down drastically. You start feeling ill in a substantial amount. Now, what happens after that? When a migrant worker or a migrant laborer, they fall sick, they are missing out on the work days, they cannot go to work, so there is a loss of wage. So that is harmful. So they don't want to indicate to the public that they are suffering from something so that they are able to earn. Secondly, TB is considered a taboo, still a social taboo. So they will face social stigma and isolation. They don't want that, so they don't disclose it. And if the condition deteriorates further, they migrate back to their villages. And that is where you cannot go for tracking anymore. You cannot administer medicines anymore. So that is when difficulty in tracking is one of the major issues. There is a lack of infrastructure for testing and the professionals who are available, and low skilling as well. But other than that, during the COVID pandemic in particular, and slightly till later on as well, there has been a supply chain constraint which has been felt in terms of the supply of medicines, due to which shortage of medicines have left many of the patients in lurch. So these are the issues which need to be solved at urgent. Now here, what is the way forward? So that is important. Identifying an issue is easy. What is the way forward? So way forward can be divided into many cases. First is, the most important is spreading the awareness. Awareness about what? That you can suffer from TB? Yes. But also that TB is curable. Once we spread that awareness that it is just like any other disease, if you follow the medicines, you will get cured, then the social stigma will get removed. Once the social stigma is gone away, then you will be able to administer, or you will be able to have more people come for testing as well. Isn't it? So that is when people will be more accepting to this. And that is the key to identifying more patients. Then other than that, active testing. What is active testing? For example, in vulnerable communities, in high frequency occurrence areas, go for randomized testing. Don't wait for people to come to you and go for test. Vietnam has done this. Vietnam has gone for aggressive active testing. So when you start testing random samples, you are also able to find out which are the hubs where the disease is more spread and more widespread. So in that case, you will be able to identify. Unless and until you are able to detect, you won't be able to diagnose. And if both of these are not happening, treatment is simply out of the question. Then other than that, collaboration with the NGOs in order to spread the awareness also, and also in order to track for the diagnostic and the treatment purposes, and also help in ensuring a better penetration of the healthcare facilities at the local level. Then infrastructure development at public healthcare centers, at the local level, training of the staff. So infrastructure here means both the hard infrastructure and the soft infrastructure. Hard infrastructure as in the building requirements, the machines, the equipments. Soft infrastructure as in the trained professionals, the paramedical staff, etc. Then this also has to be backed up by political will and political awareness. How many of our politicians and member of parliaments are actually aware about the impact, the types and the ways to cure TB? If the political participants of our country, for example, the MLAs, the MPs, they give a clarion call to the larger masses that get yourself tested for TB, we have to eliminate TB from our district, automatically people will listen to that. So these are the slew of measures, not only in one particular area, but overall across the various different parameters which can help solve the problem of TB. Yes, you have new researches also which are coming in for shorter diagnostic time for TB testing. You have the TrueNAP test as well. At the same time, you also have the better diagnostic and better kind of medicines which have come in the market, which the medicines you have to take only for 2 to 3 months rather than 6 to 8 months. So that also will bring about a better follow-up. So R&D, improved R&D also under the part of infrastructure itself you have to write. Okay. So that is the entire topic of TB. Right? More than what is given in the article, we have discussed comprehensively about TB. So what have we discussed? The types, the spread, the reason for massive spread, conditions and situation in India, what are the issues due to which it is spreading in India, the government initiatives for fighting and combating TB, and then what is the way forward. That is a comprehensive coverage where for prelims you can expect questions and even for mains examination. Let us take a look at one of the practice questions for the mains examination. Now here, tuberculosis due to its nature is the biggest killer in modern India. Analyze the statement highlighting the initiatives to combat TB. R&D basically refers to research and development. Okay. Now, highlighting the initiatives to combat TB. So, what is the intro that you have to write? In introduction, you have to write about the status of TB in India. Tuberculosis, how you can frame that is, tuberculosis, which is spread by the pathogen Mycobacterium tuberculosis, is one of the deadliest infectious or contaminable diseases which the world suffers from. With almost 27% of the global burden of TB cases, India is one of those countries and regions where the casualties and the mortalities due to TB are extraordinarily high. That will be your introduction. Okay, very brief. So, status of TB, and there you have mentioned even the pathogen. Okay, TB in India. You are highlighting to the evaluator that you have understood the phrase biggest killer in modern India. So that creates a good impression. Then in the body part, what do you write? You start by talking about the issues due to which TB cases are increasing, right? So the TB cases, which are the issues that we are facing. Simultaneously, you can also take the approach that prior to this, you also mentioned about the types of TB, pulmonary, extrapulmonary, drug-resistant, very brief one-liners you write about them. After the issues, then you talk about the government initiatives. Which government initiatives you will write? Talk about National TB Elimination Program. Now there, when you are writing this, don't start mentioning that it is basically the renaming of revised National TB Control Program. It is the renaming of RNTCP. That is not required. Just talk about what is National TB Elimination Program. Then talk about the Jan Andolan, which is sought to be created by the Pradhan Mantri TB Mukt Bharat Abhiyan. Right? Talk about Nikshay Mitras, the stream of volunteers. Right? So when you have discussed about this, then leave a space, write a sentence that despite all the challenges, India has some reason to be optimistic. The decline in TB deaths or the TB mortality has been more than 24% in the recent year, which is almost twice and more than twice the global average of decline. Now, once you have written this, you are adding the information for the evaluator that I know about the progress also, about the tracking of the progress. Then after that, in the conclusion and in the last part of the body, mention about the way forward. That will constitute your entire answer, which will give you good marks. Okay? Try writing for this and improve for the mains exam. Okay? And do practice it today itself. Don't leave it for posterity. Now, having said that, many of you face issue in terms of prelims examination. Given that prelims examination is only 4 months away, we do have a lot of things to cover: current affairs, CSAT, IR, environment, ecology, science and tech, GS subjects, test series, PYQs, places in news. Then, for example, you have the reports and indices, when to cover, how to cover. Many of us are overwhelmed by this, due to which we leave out important areas, or we push the important areas that we will do it in the month of May. So that is where we have come up with a video about the entire prelim schedule that will help you and will guide you for the preparation. Do take a look at this video. Understand how to prepare your own schedule. Even those of you who are preparing for next year or the year after that, even those of you, understand the nuances of how to make your own schedule, how to divide time so as to have maximum efficiency of your effort that you are putting in. Do take a look at the video. The link is provided in the description below. Now, after this, we come to the next article. The next article is WHO is right. Now, US President Donald Trump, as soon as he took office, he immediately signed an executive order marking the departure or the exit of US from World Health Organization. Now, it will take around an year for the completion of that exit. But having said that, this is a very big step by the US. And Donald Trump, in his very viral speech, also said that, look, WHO has ripped us off. Right. So while the article argues about that also, that this is a very low level of speech. So I'm not going to comment on whether it is a high level of speech or low level of speech, and we should not focus on that. But we have to understand the implication, the thought process behind it, and what are the implications. So first of all, when we talk about, let's suppose, what is it that Donald Trump and the administration is thinking? And in what mindset are they thinking? So, US contributes around 18% of the annual budget of WHO, of annual budget to WHO. Now, what Donald Trump said that, look, we have given close to $400 to $500 million to WHO, and we give that much amount of money in an year. China, with a population of 1.4 billion, is giving WHO only around $39 million. So WHO is ripping us off. They are biased towards China. They have been incapable to handle the COVID pandemic. So US is not going to participate. Right? That is the entire context. That China 1.4 billion is giving only $39 million as contribution to WHO. We, or US, having 300 million population, they are giving around $400 to $500 million annually to WHO. Now, there have been allegations against the WHO for the past few years, where it is said that it is overwhelmingly being influenced by countries like China. When we take a look at how WHO handled COVID pandemic in hindsight, we know that it was a gross mismanagement, in the sense, declaration of COVID pandemic as a non-serious infection, something which cannot be spread air to air. Now, if these warnings could have been rectified and WHO, which apparently knew the details, could have shared the details a long time back, that would have saved countless number of lives. So since that point of time, the trust issues with WHO have persisted. Now, when we talk about the impact of US withdrawal, what will be the overall impact? Now, funding for when US withdraws, obviously a large scale fund, think about it, that you are any kind of organization, right? Now you guys are mature enough to think, let's suppose you have opened a startup, you are working in a company, and the company's budget is suddenly slashed by around 20%. Think about the cost cutting which will happen. In the organizational level, already WHO is understaffed in many of the countries. So the staffing will go, many of the staff will go. Then other than that, the ability to procure medicines, ability to procure vaccines. Now, WHO is not only about serving the rich countries. In fact, the entire agenda of WHO is to ensure a healthier world. And a healthier world cannot be ensured unless and until you provide medical interventions in sub-Saharan Africa, in many regions of Asia, in regions of South America, where the people are actually languishing much below the poverty line and suffering from various diseases. Inability of WHO to carry out these processes and programs can mean outbreak of certain various kinds of diseases. We know that we are living in a kind of a connected world where nobody is safe unless and until everybody is safe, isn't it? So if some region is impacted by a disease, let's suppose tomorrow there is an outbreak of a disease like Ebola in Africa. Now, does that mean it remains constrained to Africa itself? It can spread to other regions of the world. People travel, pathogens travel. So that is why funding for vital medicines and equitable distribution of the medicines and vaccines in poor countries, that will take a long hit. And this also provides opportunity for countries like China to increase their influence in the global bodies. Now, that is never good. That would also mean many of the Chinese drugs will now be supplied. Now, we know the efficacy of Chinese drugs are slightly lower. I'm not saying that now China will replace US. No, because the provision of funding is much less. So slowly and steadily, China is increasing the amount of funding it gives to international bodies. But still, it is quite restricted. But it is about the global influence. There, China is replacing the US. Now, not only the poorer countries, the developing countries, but also in terms of tracking the progress of various different countries in terms of the health parameters, those will take a hit. So there is a long-term impact that WHO is going to face. But at the same time, again, as we had discussed yesterday, this is an attack on multilateralism as well. Right? The multilateral institutions, they won't be trusted anymore. Now, after this, what is the way forward? The other countries have to pitch in. There has to be, for example, India led the way by giving the example to the world of vaccine diplomacy. So those kind of measures can fill the gap. And more importantly, there needs to be a public awareness campaign in order to improve or increase the understanding of the role of WHO in the modern day world. Okay. Now, moving to the third article, a grey birthday for the Election Commission of India. Now, this is an article which talks about the Election Commission of India. Now, first of all, itself, if you take a look at it, it is written by Praveen Chakrabarty. Now, he is the chairman of the data analytics wings of the one of the national parties, that is the Congress party. So this article has got slight of or a significant amount of political inclination. So we are not going to delve into the political implication in this. But having said that, it is only just for you to know that what this article is about. This is about the electoral rolls and the malpractices, the alleged malpractices in the electoral roll in Maharashtra. This talks about that how electoral victory of the ruling party in Maharashtra could have been influenced by the Election Commission of India. Right? Now, this article is written on the eve of 25th of January, which marks the 75th anniversary of the foundation and the formation of Election Commission of India. So rather than going into the political tug of war about who is correct, who is not correct, whether the victory was justified or not justified, let us talk about Election Commission of India. So Election Commission of India and its entire formation is talked about in Article 324 of the Indian Constitution. Now, Article 324 of the Constitution talks about that there shall be a constitution, or rather, there shall be a commission which shall take care of the elections for the parliament, state legislation, election to the offices of president and vice president. That commission is the Election Commission of India. Now, Election Commission of India, who appoints the members, and what is the condition for appointment? So there, President appoints the Chief Election Commissioner and the other election commissioners as well. Now, they have a tenure of 6 years or up to the age of 65 years, whichever is earlier. There is no reappointment, however. If an election commissioner is elevated to the level of Chief Election Commissioner, still the overall tenure has to be 6 years only. Okay. Now, an individual generally at the rank of secretary to the government of India or higher, they are chosen by the selection committee. It is a selection committee which provides a recommendation to the president, and then president takes that decision and appoints the election commissioners. Now here, what is the or who constitutes the selection committee here? So when we talk about the selection committee, it is inclusive of the Prime Minister, a union cabinet minister, and the leader of opposition or leader of the largest opposition party in the Lok Sabha. They will constitute the selection committee. Now, there was a lot of hue and cry when this, and there was a lot of debate, argument, and criticism about the reforming of the selection committee, and rightfully so, because if you think about it, the selection committee will include a cabinet minister, leader of opposition, right? Two of the individuals. One from the ruling party, another one from the opposition party. And then you have the casting vote or the final decision maybe by the Prime Minister. So think about it. From the ruling party, you have two of the representatives. From the opposition, you have only one representative. So always the recommendations of the government will be passed by the selection committee. So that in a way is problematic in the sense that you can have a certain kind of individuals in the election commission. That is why appointment of election commissioners is a widely debated topic, and the neutrality of election commission, that is why, is something which has come under the lens. Now, what are the overall issues that the Election Commission of India faces after 75 years of its formation? Because understand, India is an electoral democracy. Free and fair elections, they are the bulwark of our democratic DNA. And if those free and fair elections are under shadow, even a perceived shadow, if let's suppose I don't have an evidence that the election is unfair, but I have a suspicion that the election might not be fair, that means my entire trust in the democratic process is eroded. That means my participation in the election programs, etc., will be reduced. So those are the issues that Election Commission of India faces after 75 years of its formation. What are the issues? Voter participation. Now, while the rural voter participation in many of the country, many of the portions and of the country, they are extraordinarily good, more than 60-65%, in certain cases even more than 70%, which is enormously high when you compare it to the developed nations. But then, when we talk about our urban voter participation, that is abysmally low. Be it when you consider the metropolitan region of Mumbai, metropolitan region of Bangalore, or the region of Delhi, Kolkata, Hyderabad, Chennai, any of these areas. Urban voter participation is low. Any democratic setup can function vitally in a perfect manner only if the voter participation is robust. Now, we need voter awareness as well. Awareness about what? Awareness about the electoral process. What happens when you cast the vote? How is it that the counting is done? Who are the individuals who are there to ensure free and fair counting? Where is it that your audit trail is there? Okay, how to cast the vote? And more importantly, the importance of casting the vote. Because the common perception, which has also become very fashionable nowadays, is that I don't vote because it makes no sense, because the government is not for me, right? The government is by the corrupt. It is we who choose the government. It is we who choose the representatives from our society. So we need to be aware about our own rights and our power to choose the individuals that we prefer. So voter awareness, if it improves, voter participation will automatically improve. Other than that, sanitization of electoral rolls, which is a major issue nowadays. There have been allegations which have been put on the Election Commission of India for the past couple of years and more now, that there is a mismanagement of electoral rolls. Many of the individuals and voters in the constituency find their names struck off from the final voting list. Simultaneously, many of the new entrants are there. The article, in fact, also argues, the article which is mentioned in the editorial argues that there were enormous additions in the electoral rolls in Maharashtra elections, something which was not there during the Lok Sabha election. Now you have the public statement by the Union Minister of Road Transport and the Highways, Mr. Nitin Gadkari, who said that many of the voters, his supporters in his constituency, found their names struck off the electoral rolls prior to the Lok Sabha elections. So think about it. It is an allegation which members of the ruling party, members of the opposition party, both of them are leveling. Means what? There is some issue with the electoral rolls. So how do you rectify that? You ensure periodic sanitization of the electoral rolls, periodic let's suppose surveying, ensuring the linkage with Aadhar data. That is where you can have the verified electoral roll. Okay, so that is a very important issue nowadays, curbing the role of money power. Elections are nowadays no longer about choosing the most apt candidate. Electoral process nowadays is also about who has the greatest of the money power. In many constituencies, not to say that in every constituency, if that would have been the case, the richest individual of the district would also always have been the MP. But in many of the districts in our country, that is the case. That if you are an individual who can shell out 20, 30, 40 crores, then you can be the member of parliament. So the money power is being vicious, and that needs to be curbed. How do you curb that? Greater scrutinization, greater follow-up, and also ensuring transparency in terms of funding. That transparency in funding by the political parties, that will lower the burden which the election commission faces immediately prior to the election. Any election that you take a look into nowadays, even in the municipal elections, right now, there also you will find that during inspection, crores and crores of cash, they are found stashed away or they are detected. Think about the undetected cash which finds its way into the market. So that is where curbing money power is important. Perception of biasness. Now, that is never good for a healthy electoral democracy. If you perceive that the election commission is biased, you will never trust the results. If you are unable to trust the results, then your entire faith in the democratic setup gets eroded. So that is where time and time again, holding of mass awareness program, ensuring public participation, ensuring hackathon sessions, challenges that the election commission gives out that try to hack the EVMs, tell us what are the lacunae. That is required. That citizen drive, that is very much important. Hate speeches and the era of misinformation. There are various rumors and misinformation and the hate speeches, irresponsible usage of terms which are made by the political participants. That needs to be curbed by taking the stringent of the action whenever the event happens. And also greater tracking, because we are living in the era of AI and digital medium. So any speech can be mimicked and can be artificially reproduced. So there has to be greater scrutiny and greater monitoring for that as well. So these are some of the issues. However, there are few other issues that the Election Commission of India also faces. What do you think are the other issues faced by Election Commission? And in your suggestion, in your opinion, what do you think should be the way forward? Put that in the comment section. Let us see if we are able to find some solutions to the problems and the perceptual problems that we face. Right? Now, what is the way forward? First of all, transparency. Transparency in what? Transparency in electoral fundings. That is vital. It will curb the money power as well. Then greater scrutiny. Greater scrutiny to curb misinformation, to remove misinformation. Okay? Then after that, there has to be increased frequency of citizen drive, citizen programs, awareness programs, hackathon sessions, everything is there. Okay? Then after that, you also have the other aspects which you can bring forward. For example, the transparency in terms of, let's suppose the Election Commission can now ensure that elections are held more efficiently. There is maybe the electoral season which spreads over 1.5 months or 2 months, that automatically creates a voter fatigue, due to which the participation level of the voters, especially in those areas which are suffering from adverse conditions like heat waves, the voter participation lowers. So understanding the voter behavior and working towards that. Now there is no sense in order to, because in the era of, let's suppose, when you had paper ballots, it was understood that logistical issues meant that the election cycle continues for, let's suppose, many years or many days, many weeks. But now in the era of EVMs, you do not need to have, or you are not necessitated to have elections for 7 phases, 8 phases in a particular state. That is simply not rational anymore. So efficiency of the electoral process, complete VVPATs, audit trails, these are the ones which will improve the transparency and repose the trust in the election commission. Okay? Now, then the practice questions. This is one of the, again, frequently asked areas in GS paper 2. So elections are the vital yardsticks to maintain the health of an electoral democracy. In the context of the statement, discuss the challenges faced by ECI in ensuring free and fair elections. So in that, what do you write in the intro? How do you provide the intro? Very vital in this. So, how do you frame it? You talk about the constitutional article. Article 324 of the Indian Constitution provides or gives the provision for the formation of Election Commission. Right? That is what you talk about. Election Commission of India is responsible for conducting free and fair elections for the members of the Parliament, state legislature, as well as the offices of President and the Vice President. Right? That will be your intro about Election Commission of India, about ECI. However, the issues like the selection committee, etc., that becomes relevant for your prelims. So don't leave that out. Then in the body portion, delve into the challenges. Right? So how do you delve into challenges? Write a sentence where you talk about, there have been, in the past few years, there have been increased perceptional issues regarding the functioning of Election Commission, about the efficacy of the Election Commission. So that is what you talk about. Now, it is a reality that 75 years after its formation, Election Commission is fraught with multiple challenges. So that is, after this one line of intro, that is when you talk about the challenges. List out the challenges that we have discussed in a point sub-paragraph manner. Write a point, underline it, and write a sub-paragraph. That is a couple of sentences associated with that. Then after that, because it is a 15-marker question, should you restrict yourself only to the challenges? No. Provide the way forward as well. Okay? In the conclusion, that is when you comment on this statement. That is when you get back to the statement. Right? India is an electoral democracy, and a healthy electoral democracy can only exist if there is faith on free and fair elections. For that, the most important body across the country becomes the Election Commission of India. Right? So Election Commission of India not only has the duty to be absolutely neutral, but also perceived to be neutral. So like that, you talk about the way forward and write the conclusion. Okay? So try writing that. That will constitute your entire answer. Transparency basically means that when you are transparent, you make people aware of the process. Transparency in electoral fundings mean the political parties, whatever amount of money that they get, so from where do they get that money? That is about transparency. Okay? Then, is France's influence in West Africa over? Now, this article follows the context that Ivory Coast, on 1st of January, Ivory Coast announced that French troops would withdraw by the end of the month. Now, this followed a slew of announcements last month, where you had the president of Senegal, right? Chad, all of them, now Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, all of them have announced the withdrawal of the French troops. Now, there are a group of countries in the Sahel region which have which have had a colonial experience of the French, and over the multiple decades, even after decolonization, the French have maintained sizable troop presence and a hefty diplomatic influence over these Sahel regions. Now, that is where these countries have slowly and steadily started reasserting their own sovereignty, and they have discarded the French influence. So that is something which is worrisome for the European region and for France in general. So these are the countries of the Sahel region that you have to be aware of. So that is the Burkina Faso region, Chad, Niger, Mali, all of these. Now these are very, very poor countries with a lot of issues. Now Ivory Coast in this region, coastline of West Africa itself, take a look at the atlas, locate where Senegal, Ivory Coast, Chad, Mali, Niger, all of them are. That will solve your places in news issue as well. Now, here, why is it that the French influence or there's a French withdrawal which is being urged by the heads of state of these particular countries? So the reasons for that withdrawal of the French or a forced withdrawal of the French. First is reassertion of sovereignty. All the heads of the state of these countries, they have alleged that their sovereignty is being curbed because of overt diplomatic and military presence of the French troops. And they feel that they are not independent enough to take actions. But more importantly, this is on the back of a hostile public perception as well. Over the decades, the public perception has been changing. Earlier, they were not that hostile towards the French troops, right? But in the past decade and a half, the image of the French troops have gone down substantially amongst the population of the Sahel region. Why? Because, first of all, the number of troops deployed are around 300, 500, etc. But additionally, many of these countries, they suffer from issues such as terrorism and so on. Now, that is where, due to inadequate information, due to inadequate numbers, the French troops are not always effective. And here steps in the Russian mercenaries. Now, the Russian mercenaries, they have been very active in the region of West Asia and the region of Africa for now more than a decade. Mercenaries as in the freelancers who work and who wield individual powers, who will have their own kind of a team, lot of weapons, and they are non-state actors. So they do the bidding of the highest payer. Whosoever pays them the highest, they do their bidding. Now, these Russian mercenaries, they are most oftentimes, it has been found that they are on good terms with the military leadership in these particular states, and many of the states of many of these countries, they have experienced military coups and military upmanship. So that is when the influence of the mercenaries have gone up. So the public perception about the efficacy of French troops, that they are not important anymore. So that is where the French influence has come to an end. Now, here, what are the implications? Implications are, first of all, that when you have the withdrawal of the French, the diplomatic influence will reduce. Diplomatic influence will wane. Also, the ability to trade, that is also dwindling. Now, this is something which has been experienced in almost all the European countries. All the European countries, now they are not interested in the region of Africa anymore. Why? Suddenly there is a disinterest. Because they don't have that economic might. Majority of the European countries, they are suffering from economic crisis in one phase or the other. So for them to be exerting influence at a faraway land seems a far-fetched idea. They are suffering from energy crisis, they are suffering from food crisis, recessional kind of pressures, etc. So that is where the trade volumes of European Union with Africa has been coming down from 55 to 35 billion euros and so on. At the same time, there is the player that is China, which is having a trade volume with Africa close to around 70 billion euros and increasing. So the Chinese are ready to invest. The Europeans are reluctant. So the Europeans are withdrawing. The Chinese influence is increasing. Right? So increased influence of Russia and China is a reality. But overall, the impact is again going to be that we are staring at a bipolar world, in the sense that you will again have the emergence of an overwhelming power of China, which goes for extraction of minerals, etc. Something that the European powers did in the 1800s. China has modernized that form of economic exploitation. So it is the African nations and the poorer sub-Saharan regions which can suffer, which can be forced into debt traps and a kind of economic colonialism. Now, overall, when we talk about, let's suppose the French, now with the French troops, there was a lot of pressure as well in these countries that you have to follow democratic ideals, etc. There has to be a democratic form of government. And as I told you, in many of these countries, that is not the norm. It is the military regime which takes power. It is authoritarian. It is dictatorial. So, with the mercenaries and with China, you don't have such problems. You don't have such pressures. Democracy is not the value that they wake up and sleep with. So that is why they don't fret if there is a dictatorial regime or an authoritarian regime in Africa. So that again has long-term implications for democratic values in the region of Sahel region. Okay? Now, coming to the articles relevant for your prelims. So here, Centre yet to give approval to Tamil Nadu's Cauvery South Vellar link project, says Supreme Court. So, there has been the case in front of the Supreme Court where the link project from transferring water from Cauvery to the Vellar, that has been put under question. Now, there had been request by Karnataka government to not initiate this or not give the approval for the project, because Karnataka is against transferring the water from river Cauvery anywhere else. Now, this Cauvery South Vellar project seeks to transport water from the Mettur Dam and create a large water storage region in the area of Salem in Tamil Nadu. So that is where the idea is to build a large water storage reservoir, more particularly in the Biligundu region around the Karnataka border. Now, Karnataka is not overtly happy, but then Tamil Nadu wants to pursue that. And Centre has not given the in-principle approval for almost 4 years now. Now, what is vital for your prelims examination? River Cauvery, Vellar, and also when we talk about river Vaigai. Because you see, there is a long-term project of Cauvery-Vaigai-Gundar link. Now, here is where you will find river Cauvery. Okay, where does Cauvery originate from? River Cauvery originates from the Brahmagiri hills in the Kodagu district of Karnataka, from the region that is Thalakauveri. From there, it drains eastward into the Bay of Bengal through the fertile lands of Tamil Nadu and the Cauvery Delta. Now, river Cauvery is unique because during the time of the advancing monsoon, the upper course of the river receives water due to rainfall, and during the retreat of the monsoon and northeast monsoon season, during that point of time, the lower course, the Coromandel coast, receives water. So, Cauvery has got water sufficient throughout the year. Having said that, greater exploitation and utilization by the urban areas in the region, they have made the region or made the entire river basin slightly water scarce. Then you have here the presence of another river, that is river Vellar. Okay, and here you have river Vaigai. So these have to be interconnected, and that is the program for or the long-term project for interconnection. So origin of river Cauvery, the location. UPSC can also ask which of these are east flowing and west flowing. So for Mahanadi, Krishna, Godavari, Cauvery, you know that they drain into Bay of Bengal. Everybody knows Narmada Tapi drains into Arabian Sea. But it is these kind of rivers, that is Vellar, Vaigai, that is where oftentimes the candidates get confused. So that is how you have to catch it up. Okay, and observe this. This is how you extract the current affairs from the article. You don't have any article separately talking that this is the river and this is the tributary. It is an issue in front of the Supreme Court. Identify what has to be extracted from that and study and concentrate upon that. Okay. Now the next article. Now this is about Mazagaon Docks, right? Mazagaon Dock Shipyard Limited has its technical bid for Project 75I submarine that has been cleared. Most probably, MDL will get the bid or get the contract for building the P75I submarines. Now, what is Project 75I? Very brief. So, it is about building conventional submarines for the Indian Navy. Conventional submarines in the sense they are the diesel operated and the diesel fuel generator based submarines, right? You have the nuclear submarines. Nuclear submarines, they operate, they get the power from the nuclear reactor. So they can stay submerged for endless amount of time. They don't need to surface. But when we talk about the diesel and the diesel electric submarines, every few days, they need to snorkel up or they need to put a snorkel up or come to the surface. Why? In order to take in the air for recharging of the batteries. That is what makes detection of these submarines easy. Now, under Project 75I, the aim is to create or manufacture indigenous submarines where the content, the indigenous components are supposed to be higher. Right? Now, other than that, there is also the technology of air-independent propulsion, which Indian Navy lacks as of now. AIP. And just for comparison's sakes, our adversary, Pakistan, has started increasing the number of submarines it has enriched with AIP technology. What is AIP? In this, within the submarine itself, you have a system whereby you synthesize or you in a way process the water and you are able to produce oxygen out of it. As a consequence of that, even if your submarine is diesel based, you don't need to surface. So you can stay submerged for longer duration and avoid detection. That is the concept of air independent propulsion, that within the submarine underwater itself, you are able to manufacture and produce oxygen, which will take care of respirational demands by the crew members and also for recharging of the batteries, etc. So that is the additional kind of technology which is sought under Project 75I. Okay, that is relevant for your exam. Now, after this, Indian naval vessel finishes hydrographic survey of Mauritius. So the naval vessel, that is INS Sarvekshak, has carried out the hydrological mapping, whereby you do the bathymetric studies in the sense that you map the ocean bottom, you take a look at the various different relief features so that you understand where what kind of, let's suppose, canyons can be present, where what kind of reef structures can be present, where we have the plains, deep sea plains, etc. So that mapping has been done and it has been given to the president, handed over to the president. Now this is a part of the Sagar initiative by India. Now here we can extract about what do we understand by Sagar initiative. So what is Sagar initiative? So it is an initiative that is security and growth for all in the region, in the Indian Ocean region. So in the Indian Ocean realm, ensuring security, collaboration, capacity building, handling of natural disaster, Indian Navy seeks to position itself as a net security provider in the Indian Ocean region. So the Sagar initiative is to bring these countries on the one platform. So the policy was first announced in 2015 by the Prime Minister, and the vision is to improve security, be it against pirates, be it against the enemy country, capacity building, more collaboration, more joint exercises, collective action against humanitarian and disaster relief actions, those kind of activities, sustainable development and maritime engagement, so that the entire Indian Ocean region is an area of peace and active collaboration. Okay. Now, another article which has appeared in the science section of the newspaper, even though the article is large and long, you don't have to worry too much about it. It is about rhodamine B. Rhodamine B is one of those chemicals which adds that fluorescent color like a dye, right? So used in textile industry and also used in food industry. That is why various different agencies and regulators, they have banned the food items which use that rhodamine B. You see, rhodamine B, it gives that fluorescence appearance. That is why it is also something which is about, or let's suppose, which is also used in scientific experiments. Okay, also used to carry out scientific experiments as a dye. Now, in many of the food items that you would have consumed, like candies, cotton candies that are very widespread in India, there rhodamine B is found. Now, what is the impact of rhodamine B? Now, rhodamine B is considered to be carcinogenic. Carcinogenic as in it can cause cancer, right? Other than that, it causes impact on the liver and bladder. Then other than that, it can cause allergies, which can be very, very severe. More vulnerable population, that is the elderly, the young, they are much more vulnerable to that, right? So this is something which can have various different stress impact on the body. That is why US FDA has banned it for a long time. Now, inspections have been carried out by the Tamil Nadu government as well, and due to which Tamil Nadu government has banned the sale of cotton candies there, right? Those cotton candies which are sold by the street vendors, they use rhodamine B. Same step has been taken by Karnataka government as well as the Puducherry government. So that is where the action is there, but you need public awareness about the impact of it. Most of you would have consumed these cotton candies from your childhood days, but you are not aware that these kind of carcinogenic chemicals are used. Many of us, we have the impression that this is absolutely nothing but sugar, but it is not. So what needs to be done? Greater amount of randomized checks and more public awareness. Okay, so what is rhodamine B? Its usage and its impact. So also used in textile industry as a chemical dye for scientific reactions and scientific indicator. Okay, now this is an image which has appeared in the op-ed page of the newspaper. This is about an individual who is fixing a kind of, if you can see, a QR code in Jammu and Kashmir on a tree. So this is an initiative launched by the Jammu and Kashmir state government about what is known as the digital Tree Aadhar scheme. Now this digital Tree Aadhar scheme is launched at conservation of the chinar trees. The number of chinar trees, chinar is a kind of a montane vegetation which you find in slightly higher altitudes. So those chinar trees, they are very vital for the ecosystem and also in a way a kind of an identity for the high montane forest ecosystems. Now those chinar trees, they are also in large demand for commercial purposes. Jammu Kashmir has witnessed a systematic deforestation of chinar trees. That is why the J&K Forest Department, in partnership with J&K Forest Research Institute, they have launched that digital Tree Aadhar program, whereby a QR code is affixed to every tree, and by scanning the QR code, you get an idea about the geographical location, the height, the canopy cover, as well as the girth of the tree, the age of the tree. So that improves the awareness level, and when you improve the awareness level, you improve the conservation status as well. So a digital plate with a QR code has been affixed, and when scanned, provides information. A total of 28,560 trees have been geotagged for better follow-up as well. Okay, so what is that digital Tree Aadhar scheme, where it has been launched? Then digital economy to constitute fifth of Indian GDP by 2030 as per the ICRIER report. Now you don't have to go for the entirety of the report. Here, one sentence that is important for your prelims that you have to extract is that India's digital economy will grow twice as fast as the overall economy, due to improved digital penetration, increased usage of smartphones, etc. So, constitute 13% of the national income as of now. By 2024 to 25, it will constitute 13.42% of the national income. In 2022 and 23, this was 11.74%. And it is estimated by 2030, this number will reach 20%. So here, what kind of questions can you expect in the prelims? India's or digital India's contribution to the economy is around 25%. Correct or incorrect statement? Those kind of questions you can always expect. Okay, so that is where you have to take a look into it. That digital economy, first of all, will grow twice as the rate of other economic parameters. Right? Now, tea industry breaks a sweat over massive import spurt from Kenya. Now, India, which is a tea producing country, has been experiencing an increase in the import from Kenyan market. Kenyan tea has flooded the market, putting price pressures on Indian tea and Indian tea producers as well. Having said that, India's exports to the global market for tea has also managed to see an increase. The trends are important. Import has increased, exports have also increased. How is that possible then? If the exports are also increasing, imports are also increasing. Due to factors of climate change, erratic rainfall pattern, there has been a loss of the crop of tea in the region of Assam and Darjeeling. So that loss in produce is fulfilled by the import from the Kenyan market. Okay, that is what you have to understand. Again, another kind of question. The amount of tea that India exports is lower than the amount of tea that India imports. Correct or incorrect? These kind of questions you have to keep a track of. So India exports far more amount of tea as compared to what the import is. Import is much less as compared to the exports. For example, in India, when we talk about the exports, right, so from January to October, right, the basically when we talk about the import from Kenya, from January to October, that import has shot up by almost 288%, where earlier it was 3.53 million tons. Now it has increased to around 13 million tons. But India's tea exports from 184 million tons, it has now increased to 209 million tons. So our export is almost 20 times that of what we are importing in general. Okay. Now, another image has appeared in the World Affairs section, but here also we are going to extract something productive for the exam. Now, this is an image of the beach goers in the region of Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. Now, here the term perceived temperature is used. That the perceived temperature had hit almost 62.3 degrees Celsius. Now, what is this perceived temperature? We know that real temperature cannot hit 62.3 degrees Celsius, that too in the regions like Brazil. So, what is this perceived temperature? It is about what your body feels as in, let's suppose outside temperature is 40 degrees Celsius, but there is no wind movement. Humidity is high. Then even when you step out, it will be so hot. You will feel as if the temperature is 50 degrees Celsius. So that is the perceived temperature. So it is how warm or cold people feel in a given environment as opposed to the actual air temperature. Okay. So this perceived temperature is dependent on what? It is dependent on the air temperature, the wind movement, because many of the times when the wind movement is there will be evaporation. So even if it is very hot and you are sweating, there is perspiration, wind will ensure that there is evaporation and the cooling down of your skin. So you will be comfortable. But lack of wind movement, high moisture or high humidity, you will feel that the temperature is much more as compared to what the real value is. So wind factor, humidity, amount of solar insolation, duration of sunshine, also the shade, availability of shade. So these are the factors which are vital for the perceived temperature. Okay? So that is again important for your prelims exam. Perceived temperature can be much higher than the actual temperature. And in colder areas, in temperate regions, when the wind factor is very strong, what is known as the wind chill effect, perceived temperature sometimes can be lower as well. Okay? So that brings us to the end of the discussion for today. Hope that you have liked the content and the value addition to your existing knowledge set. Those of you appearing for the examination this year, do take a look about how to prepare the schedule even for next year or the year after that. And do join us in Hyderabad on 25th, that is Saturday, for the offline workshop. Till we meet again, take care, goodbye, and thank you.